Well, good morning, my friends, and pinch me. We have made it to Friday. Woo! It's Friday, baby. Hello, Tam. Hi, boy, mom. Hi, Tracy. Just me's ready for Friday. Mayor's in the house. Snazzy, how are you, girlfriend? Elmer, just coming off his birthday weekend. Alibi, preschool granny. I think I caught everybody else in the pre-show. Sweet Toughness. What a cool name. Hello, DT. Laura Miller. Hopefully everyone is having a good day so far and getting on to the weekend. Let me tell you, this show is very long overdue. And just when I think I'm going to tackle it and get into it, something brings me back to something else that I find in the case. Kaitlyn Conley is who we're talking about today. Kaitlyn Conley was dating Mary Yoder's son. Mary Yoder was a chiropractor on Oriskany Boulevard in Whitesboro, New York. Kaitlyn was dating her son, but she also worked at the chiropractic clinic. Now, there's a lot of things that go on inside of this family. We have infidelity. We have some spiritual beliefs that are a little off the, little out there. We have some marijuana farming going on. We have a lot of stuff going on. Well, in July 22nd, 2015, to be more correct, Mary died suddenly of colchicine poisoning. Now, colchicine is a common drug used for gout, but this was a concentrated form of it that was ordered for gardening. She had 15 times the legal limit. Okay, in June of 2016, so roughly a year, Kaitlyn was charged in her murder. Sounds pretty open and shut, right? Because they said the motive was she poisoned the mom to get back at the boyfriend. Well, it's really not that simple. Because for one, she really wasn't trying to keep the boyfriend the way they're putting it out. The first trial was a mistrial. We had a hung jury. So we get to the second trial and they throw it out there at the end. They say, you can consider manslaughter. So they gave her manslaughter. Well, I do know there's an appellate court in Rochester that wants the manslaughter thrown out. They're like, no, you put her on trial for murder. You already had a jury say, no way, she murdered her. So you can't just say, all right, go ahead and give her manslaughter. Doesn't work that way. Just me said, I believe she's innocent. I believe she's innocent, she says. So we're going to go through all of this, and it's a lot to go through. And you all be the judge, you be the jury, and you tell me, do you think Kaitlyn Conley actually poisoned and murdered Mary Yoder? Let's take a second and welcome everybody, and then we are going to welcome a very, very special guest today. Again, welcome, everybody. And without further ado, very good friend of mine who has she knows this case in and out. Let's have a huge round of applause for Dr. Booten. Good morning, my friend. I am so glad we finally got to do this. You're a busy lady.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate being able to share this information with your audience.
Oh, absolutely. Did you happen to recognize the opening video?
Yes.
Your son made it.
The opening video, the one with Janine. I can't even remember if that was the opening one. I saw that you did have that on, but that may have been last night. Oh
well. So anyway, I am so glad you're here, and let's talk about you for a minute. Not only do you have a very busy medical practice, you're also an author.
Yes. I write both fiction and nonfiction.
You are one talented lady, let me tell you.
Thank you very much.
Now, you also were a producer in a movie called 27 Matches about human trafficking. Do you have a second to talk about that before we get to our case?
Actually, the case does involve that movie. And that's one of the reasons why my son and Adam hung around together. Adam was at the movie site a number of times, which I'm not sure you knew that.
Well, we had discussed that. Okay, yeah. So now Adam is Mary Yoder's son and was dating Kaitlyn.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the trailer for 27 Matches so you guys will know what I'm talking about. This is fair use. I have a feeling, considering the producers on here, she's not going to strike me. No. So I do want everybody to check this out because it was quite a passion project. And I just really celebrate the blood, sweat, and tears that Dr. Booten, her son, and the crew put in.
My dear, I must apologize for this abrupt change to your daily routine. In society, they call us slavers, pimps, traffickers.
She didn't really tell me anything about the job. She just said it was all hush hush. What are we doing?
This kind of job you don't ask what kind of job it is.
I'm here. Step away from the window and go back to sleep. Stay from pain and truth and choice and the poison devils. See, leave about you like I do.
Amazing work. And I'm going to post this on the community tab and in the Facebook group because I want everybody to check it out. So we have to circle back now to Kaitlyn Conley, Mary Yoder. You guys understand the connection between the movie, Adam Yoder, and how our guest, knows so much about this situation. So before we get to our first clip, I'm going to let you lead.
Okay. Starting at the beginning, the couple, Mary Yoder and Bill Yoder, had a chiropractic business that they'd had for 28 years or so. And their children were pretty much grown up at this point. Two of them lived out of state. One of them was significantly younger than the other two, and he lived still with the family until just a few years before this whole thing took place. The other two sisters were married, had kids, and the youngest was finally of dating age. As a matter of fact, when I started seeing the chiropractors as a patient, he was still in junior high school. So I knew them for a while.
Right.
And gave Mary some ideas about homeschooling and things like that, because she decided to take him out of school and homeschool him. I thought that Bill was kind of strange, and I thought Mary was kind of strange too, but I didn't need to get into interpersonal relationships with them too much. I was just a patient. They all of a sudden, after I had moved away, they hear this news about her dying, and that really shocked me. And the first thing that came to mind was, I wonder who did it, because she was way too healthy to simply die overnight of a strange illness. You probably have pictures up that people have seen. She was 60 years old in those pictures. She looked great. She was a little underweight for my taste, but that was fine. That was her thing. She's very, very into vitamins, and she took a whole bunch of supplements every day. And she was into pottery, made some beautiful pottery, and she would sell it at the office. So you don't expect this whole turnaround and see that they weren't anything like the way they presented themselves.
And she was also a master gardener, and that's why the colchicine, from what I read, that's the whole reason that it was ordered and sent to the office.
Well, I don't think she used it in her gardening. I think he used it in his gardening. There's a difference here.
There you go. Let's explain that.
Bill Yoder had been using colchicine for 35 years or so. When he got out of the military and married Mary, they had no money, and they rented a big old house in South Carolina with a lot of land. And he was a brilliant man and did a lot of research easily. He found out that colchicine is put on marijuana seed would actually have a genetic effect on the seeds, and they would all grow up to be female plants, which had a higher percentage of THC than normal marijuana. So he had been using it. He made enough money pretty quickly to move them both to Georgia, buy a house, and pay for 4 years worth of tuition for both of them in a doctorate program. So it wasn't a bag of marijuana. He had one buyer that bought almost everything. So he wouldn't get into trouble for mailing it across state lines, which back then was really, really highly illegal.
Right.
And one would assume that he continued this maybe on a smaller scale because he didn't have the acreage that he had in South Carolina. But it is something that when they ordered the colchicine, they had to write a letter of intent explaining how this has an effect on certain plants, and that's what their use was. So you can't just order it in the mail. You have to say why.
Well, and my understanding is Kaitlyn could really have her pick of the litter. So she wasn't really chasing Adam the way that the prosecution put it out. And also, she was not aware that colchicine, she really didn't pay attention to it. She signed for the order, but she didn't even realize what it was and had no idea that it was poisonous. She had 0 Google searches or anything about it, except for the order when she was told to order it. Do you find that odd?
No, as a matter of fact, there were some Google searches about colchicine and other toxins on her phone, but there is a question as to whether she did it or not.
Oh.
Because both Adam and Bill were very tech savvy, and Adam and Kaitlyn had a common phone. They both had use of a single iPhone.
Okay.
In addition to other phones that they might have. And that's where the information was found.
Okay.
The question is, who did it?
Who did it? Now, I will say, when I first started following this case, the lead prosecutor said many times that it is a circumstantial case. That's why it took so long for them to charge her with murder. I still don't understand how they charged her with murder, considering, spoiler alert for you guys, Kaitlyn's family obviously is 100% on her side, but Mary Yoder's family is on her side, except for one, and that is the sister, Mary's sister, who was having an affair with Bill, and now they currently live together in the Bahamas.
Yep. Bill was going on 70, and he was a little worried that he wasn't going to have enough money to retire with. And his whole way of looking at things is he needed money. He had inherited $400,000 from his father when his father died. And he said there was not enough money for 2 people to live on. So we think that he was possibly looking for financial gratification as part of this whole thing. And he was not going to let himself get into jail. And he found out that his sister-in-law had inherited quite a bit of money when her husband died the year before.
And so they got together, and she was set with her life insurance, inheritance, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But he had one problem, and that was his wife.
Yeah.
Jewels of all trade, good morning. Let's look at this clip. It's got a lot of information. This is from when Kaitlyn Conley posted bail. So remember, this is almost a year after the murder of Mary Yoder.
Right.
I'm Don Shipman. Murder defendant Kaitlyn Conley has traded her jail jumpsuit for an electronic monitoring device.
The 23-year-old posted bail after her bail hearing in Oneida County Court this morning. Attorneys for both sides made arguments which included new details about the crime. It is your top story. News Channel 2's Jolene Ferris joining us now live here in the studio with more on this. Jolene, good evening.
Thank you, Kristen. Attorneys argued for and against bail for Kaitlyn Conley, and in the end, the judge set a bail amount of less than half what the prosecution asked for. The 23-year-old Sauquoit woman accused of poisoning her boss to death was free by lunch. The judge set bail at $100,000 cash for Kaitlyn Conley just before 10 o'clock Wednesday morning. Conley posted the money and walked out of the Oneida County Jail by noon, in spite of the prosecution's efforts to keep her there.
The evidence in this case, although circumstantial, is quite overwhelming, and we feel that the chance for a conviction is extremely high.
Conley is accused of using a purer form of common gout medicine, colchicine, which investigators say she obtained legally, to poison Whitesboro chiropractor Dr. Mary Yoder in July. Prosecutors today said Whitesboro chiropractor Dr.
Okay, that's Dr. Yoder right there, and you saw her picture on the thumbnail. Again, she was in immaculate health. She did, like dancercise, yoga, really into her pottery. Like you said, she took all types of supplements. But this colchicine was 15 times the dosage you wouldn't give it to anybody considering the concentration it was in. How many people in that office when she got sick that day had access to it?
They're saying that she would technically have had access to it, and Kaitlyn had access to it. However, there was not any finding of colchicine in the office. There was no cup that had residue. There was no powder. She had protein powder and almond milk for lunch. There was no contamination of the almond milk. There was no contamination of the protein powder. Most people are saying she probably had it before she got to work, because she would have a protein drink at breakfast also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they didn't ever test anything at the house.
And also, by the time the murder investigation started, there was
cleaned up.
There was plenty of time to clean up.
Sure. So you didn't. The only information you have about colchicine being in the office and having been opened up or anything, it would be pure speculation.
Mm-hmm. Annette said,
also, the timeline's wrong.
What's that? Say that again.
The timeline is wrong for her having gotten colchicine in her system at lunch. She had 30 patients scheduled that day, half before lunch, half after lunch. She had a very tight schedule. She wanted to go visit her mother, who had just moved into her sister's home. So she went from Whitesboro into Utica to visit her mother during lunch, and then came back. And then there were already patients waiting for her when she got back to the office. So she probably didn't have anything to eat afterwards. She claims that they claim that she would have eaten a bar, a protein bar, and Dr. Yoder claimed that she hated protein bars, but she'd eaten them in the past, so they're all pre-packaged. She's sold and used Shackley products, and they're pre-packaged protein bars. So she would have opened it herself. There was no time for Kaitlyn to don goggles and gloves to spoon the colchicine into a protein drink that Mary didn't have time to drink anyhow.
Just Me said, shoddy investigation, and they just took Bill's statements as facts. I agree with that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
also, you have to remember that some of the people that were investigating also bought pot from Bill. I don't want to name names because our friend Dr. Booten has to live there. Elaine wanted to know if Bill is still alive. Oh, Bill is alive. He's fat and happy in the Bahamas with Mary's sister, soaking up the sun,
Yeah.
drinking those tequila sunrises. Oh, yeah, he's doing just fine. He's doing just fine.
Dr. Mary Yoder in July. Prosecutors today said Conley planned the murder for 10 months and that Dr. Yoder died an extremely painful death. The defense attorney told the judge Conley maintained a 4.0 average in college while cooperating with the murder investigation and said he has no doubt his client will be in court every time she's due, saying she wants to show up and clear her name.
She was at the Orlando International Airport when I called her and told her to come back, and she did so immediately. And further, when she was actually indicted, we were given an hour to come to the law enforcement building. She got there in 30 minutes.
The judge had a few questions of his own during a brief exchange with defendant Conley.
Never been in trouble before?
No.
Never had to go to court before?
No.
Traffic ticket, anything like that?
I had a speeding ticket.
You appeared in court and resolved it?
Yes.
You never missed an appearance?
No.
And the judge also required that Conley be electronically monitored if she did post bail. The court took her passport as well. Back to you.
Bamacat, welcome. Bamacat said, I thought they found the poison under the seat in Kaitlyn's car. This has been highly speculated on. One of the problems with this is old broke-ass Adam, the boyfriend, who, here's Kaitlyn's working for his mama. He owes Kaitlyn a bunch of money and was using her car all the time. Can you help me with this, Dr. Booten?
They found the poison under the seat in Adam's car. An anonymous letter had been sent to both the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office and the Oneida County Sheriff's Office, saying the exact same thing, that there would be found the poison under the passenger seat. So they called Adam, directed him to come right over. Adam got out of the car. He's sitting smoking a cigarette and watching them, and they look around. They find gloves, goggles, colchicine, and the receipt.
After an anonymous letter was sent.
Yes. They say, one of the investigators said that Adam was so shocked he almost dropped his cigarette. So one would assume, therefore, that he did not know that this was going to happen. And who looks under their seat every day?
Oh God, I'm scared too. Okay. That's Greg's job. Also, something that cannot be ignored in this case is that Tara Hegde, the vibrant, active mother-in-law of Leanna Yoder, died suddenly 1 month before Mary Yoder was murdered. Mary was poisoned with colchicine, enough to kill her 15 times over. Tara became ill during a visit in Florida with Leanna's family, Mary and Bill. Despite alarming similarities in the illnesses and deaths of Tara and Mary, and despite the fact that Bill was present when each of them got sick, Tara's death was swept under the rug in the investigation of Mary. This cannot be ignored in my book.
No. As a matter of fact, he ignored it so much that he was directly asked if any similar disease symptoms had occurred in front of Mary or near Mary in the last month or so. And he said no. So, I mean, it was such an odd series of symptoms, the diarrhea, the vomiting, the terrible pain in the stomach. And no, nothing like that happened. But we do know that Tara and then Adam had a problem, I think, while the parents were in Florida with Tara dying, and Adam somehow had the same symptoms. So there's two. So and he denied it. We don't know if the mother-in-law accidentally got colchicine poisoning, which is really hard to imagine. There were no plants down there that Bill was growing. They were just there on a visit for a couple weeks.
Well, you can't get accidentally poisoned and lay on life support all that time. And then a month later, Mary gets poisoned. And then a year later, Kaitlyn, who is really kind of a flaky girl, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to pick on the girl. She's got enough going on. She's a real flake.
She's a strange person. She was all over any guy who would pay attention to her a lot of times. So, and she was, well, I dealt with her at a party once. I dealt with her as secretary, and I was kind of surprised she got a 4 all the time, because I mean, in other words, she's really good at being book smart, but people smart, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary's husband's not dead, therefore there is no cause of death.
Yeah, Mary's husband's alive.
Yes.
I think what she's asking, do we know the cause of death for the sister, Mary's sister's husband? Because Bill capitalized on that one big time.
I gather he had, the diagnosis was a kidney failure. Apparently he had some kidney problems. Whether it was long-standing or not, I'm not sure.
It's also been rumored that he was poisoned. But it's rumor. We know how the internet works.
Yeah. No, I don't really know anything about Mr. Richmond.
Okay, so this is very important. Again, Kaitlyn had a murder trial. It was a mistrial. We've had a hung jury. We get to the second trial, and they said, okay, you can consider manslaughter. The appellate court, or as they say in the Murdoch case, appeals, is saying that's got to be thrown out. That's got to be thrown out. Listen to this.
Is now in the hands of 5 appellate court judges in Rochester. Both sides argued their cases this morning. A jury convicted the Sauquoit woman in 2017 of first-degree manslaughter in the poisoning death of her boss, chiropractor Dr. Mary Yoder. Attorneys had up to 15 minutes this morning to make oral arguments. They did so virtually. Now, the main focus of Conley's appeal that jurors should not have been allowed to consider the lesser charge of manslaughter at her murder trial.
And it was not something the jury believed. And they twice rejected this case against Katie, and the manslaughter was just thrown out at the last minute.
Okay, this is really important to know. First trial, mistrial. The second one, they were hung. They kept rejecting it. They kept rejecting it. So they say, well, you can consider manslaughter. What? What?
And that was at the last minute that they changed the parameters.
Yeah.
I think it was really put together case, very badly put together. There was lack of evidence, lack of due process in that the investigation was so poor. They only looked for evidence against Kaitlyn. They didn't look for the whole picture, and that's just shocking to me. the fact that they wanted to do a one-sided investigation and then throw the book at her didn't make sense at all. It's almost like somebody knew somebody.
Somebody knew somebody. And totally different case. I'm not crossing cases. They are totally separate. Totally opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think about the Casey Anthony case when the prosecution knew, Jeff Ashcroft knew that the jury was not buying something. He just knew it. So he said, we will consider murder 2 or manslaughter. Jose Baez said, no, murder 1 and death penalty the way you charge my client. That's what they have to consider. We're not taking anything less. And here comes the jury going, no, no way. No way. Is she guilty? Yeah. Did they prove what she did to him? No. So when you see a case like this and they start getting scared, I just don't understand how her defense attorney didn't argue that and say, no, stay with murder. We're not considering manslaughter. Or was he tricked? I don't know.
I think there was some trickery involved. I can't prove it, but when you watch the timeline and see when certain items were accepted for evidence or rejected for evidence or never presented at all, I thought they had a rather poor case.
100%. They came right out of the chute. Well, I say right out of the chute. I mean, it was a year after Mary was murdered saying, oh, this case is circumstantial. I'm like, circumstantial? She was poisoned. You have a body. You have all these people. And all you can do is go after this one flaky girl who is just going to college, working at the chiropractor's office. And let's face it, she wasn't just with Adam.
Right.
She had other boyfriends. He was chasing her more than her chasing him.
Well, she was chasing a lot of people.
They twice rejected this case against Katie, and the manslaughter was just thrown out at the last minute to get a compromise verdict. I would ask the court to please dismiss the indictment and release her as soon as possible.
In part, counsel's argument is that the county court shouldn't have issued a lesser included charge because the prosecution during its trial case never advanced it, never argued for manslaughter as well as murder, and that's not a requirement.
It will likely be at least 4 to 8 weeks before the judge rules on Kaitlyn Conley's appeal.
Phew. Tell you what.
I'm just in awe of the lack of evidence. And it seems like too much of the so-called evidence was hearsay on the part of Bill Yoder. Whatever he said was the absolute truth with nothing to back it up. Could he prove that Kaitlyn was in the office on certain days? I mean, she did have classes and stuff. The payroll book was missing. The hour, where you keep the hours of the employees, it was missing. How do you even know she was there? She and Adam would alternate to a degree at the front desk because she had classes, she had things to do with her parents, whatever. Did not understand that at all.
Well, and I also never understood why Bill was not prosecuted, charged for lying on the stand. He denied infidelity on the stand. He had been knocking boots with the sister. What does he call infidelity?
Well, because he said they didn't start dating until October after the Mary died. Catherine, the sister, claims it was September when they started dating. A next door neighbor claims it was before Mary died, because he was over there a little too much, and she saw them in a definite embrace before the death of Mary, and she happened to remember the date because she and her daughter were walking by the house talking about her daughter's upcoming doctor's appointment, which was several days later.
It was before. This is what he said on the stand.
But they're not accepting the neighbor's testimony. They didn't let her go on the stand, and so it's hard.
Seems there was a lot of testimony that they wouldn't accept, and I don't understand why.
You've already admitted that you were the one to bring up the issue of heading up in marriage. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've now admitted that you're taking the drive once or twice a month away from Oneida County all the way to Albany to get away from everyone.
I mean, I said once a month.
Isn't it true that on several of those occasions, many of those occasions, isn't it true that on many of those occasions you met another woman there?
Not at all.
Did you ever, not at all?
No.
Did you ever meet Kathy Richmond at a hotel in Syracuse?
No.
See, I don't know how he sat there stone-faced and lied. He said, did you ever meet Kathy Richmond at the hotel in Syracuse? And he goes, no. No. He should have been in trouble right then for lying on the stand.
But how do you prove that he was lying? There was no one to counter that statement. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. True.
Just like when he had to meet with the investigators, and they actually had a warrant for his arrest, and he spent 6 hours with the investigators, and at the end there was no video, there was no statement, and they ripped up the warrant.
Well, they knew he was at the hotel in Syracuse. They knew that Kathy came to visit there, but his excuse has always been that he was getting away so much so he could write in private.
Yes. He told me about that years ago, that he would do that.
He told you that himself.
Oh, yeah.
You're a good-looking lady. It's a wonder he didn't invite you to come watch him write.
No, we never got to that level. I pretty much ignored him as a person. He was just my doctor, and that's all I wanted to deal with.
Watch Kaitlyn side-eye him.
Not at all.
Did you ever, not at all?
No.
Did you ever meet Kathy Richmond at a hotel in Syracuse?
No.
No. He was just there to write.
Oh, yes. He said he did that routinely. And that was long before 2015 that he said that.
He was just there to write. That's it.
Yep.
Okay. In many of these cases, we see when someone is convicted of a crime, they go to jail, they go to prison, they got the orange on, orange is the new black, whatever. You know, there's people saying they didn't do it, they didn't do it, they didn't do it. This case is so different because the people that are saying Kaitlyn didn't do it are Mary Yoder's family.
Yes.
They have been yelling about Bill, and a couple of them have been talking about Adam ever since. Anywhere I need to pause this, I want you to let me know, okay, doctor?
Sure.
Mary Yoder. And of course, we were all consumed by the Kaitlyn Conley trial, ultimately receiving a guilty verdict for manslaughter. After the jury came back, the jury was hung. 2 hours later, they came back with a guilty verdict.
Okay. This is from WIBX. So they said the jury was hung. Then they said to them, you can consider manslaughter. And so they said, all right. Now, her defense attorney explained this very poignantly. He said, listen, they wanted to go home. And that judge was not going to let them go anywhere until a decision was made.
That's almost torture for these poor people. Okay. Let's hear what
And
Janine.
in studios, Janine, good morning. Thanks for coming in. So tell me your thoughts. Are you the person who originally wrote the message on WKTV's website?
Yes.
On the message board?
Yes, I did.
And that sent shockwaves throughout the area.
Mm-hmm.
People read that and were like, I can't. Here's Mary Yoder's sister who doesn't believe that this Kaitlyn Conley committed the murder.
Right. And neither do two of my other sisters. My sister Sharon doesn't. Actually, Sharon was the one that finally called the Oneida County Sheriff's Office to find out if anyone was looking into my sister's death.
Okay.
And that was like 4 months after my sister had passed. It's not easy coming on here, and speaking against family, basically. But
yeah, because you really, at this point, this is dividing your family.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. It's really heartbreaking. But I just feel that I really have no other choice because I firmly believe in Kaitlyn Conley's innocence and her life basically hangs in the balance. So,
Yeah,
on top of losing my sister, here's a young woman that I knew that my sister loved as a daughter,
yeah,
and who loved my sister too. And I don't believe Kaitlyn would have ever hurt my sister. I kind of prepared notes here,
okay, all right.
but there's 2 points that I want to make up front. And that's, there's like some misinformation that's out in the public.
I'm going to start with just to qualify all of this,
Sure.
if I could, and that Bill Yoder and Adam Yoder are innocent in the eyes of the law, and these are your views and your opinion based on two very difficult trials your family had to go through.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to point out is that it's been said that Bill and Adam, it's known that they have immunity. As a matter of fact, Liana does too, actually. But I believe it's the DA McNamara has been saying that if enough evidence comes forward,
He did tell us that.
Yes, that could be rescinded. Their immunity could be rescinded, and that's really not true at all. They have what is.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second, and then I'll rewind it because this is really important to know. Explain the immunity that Bill and Adam got and why.
Why I'm not sure, but I have some theories. Bill and Adam were not, of course, wanting to go to jail. And it was easier to blame somebody else. And I think that Bill had some information over the head of the sheriffs or investigators, and he was willing to release that information should anybody claim that he was guilty. He ended up, after that 6-hour talk, with complete immunity for Bill, Adam, and Liana, which nobody hears about her too much. But she was also one of the people who could not be declared guilty. And this is supposedly a permanent thing. You can never retract it. Of course, if they were lying, then you can retract it. They had They had everything set up. They had 3 months to set everything up.
100%. And the thing is, it wasn't going to go away. This wasn't going to be a simple accidental poisoning because you had a medical examiner that wasn't going to let it go. You have her family calling Oneida County all the time saying, what are you doing about my sister's death? What are you doing? They knew it wasn't going to go away. Now, remember, we have 2 poisonings in one family and one person that was there for each poisoning. That person, as we speak, is walking hand in hand with his former sister-in-law, now his boo, Mary Yoder's sister, in the Bahamas, putting Noxzema on his nose and drinking a Mai Tai.
Yeah, he got what he wanted.
He did get what he wanted.
That if enough evidence comes forward, comes
He
to
did tell
light,
us that.
yes, that could be rescinded. Their immunity could be rescinded, and that's really not true at all. They have what is called transactional immunity, which is blanket immunity. It's called blanket immunity, total immunity. It completely protects them from future prosecution for this crime. Absolutely, it cannot be rescinded. The only thing that they're not safeguarded from is perjury charges, but it would be up to the DA's office to bring those charges forward. And it's unlikely that they would ever do that because it would be admitting that they had, convicted the wrong person.
So when you say, so they could never be charged with
No.
murder, I think we should get McNamara to talk about that because we did ask that question. Certainly a perjury conviction would not carry the same weight as a murder conviction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But what, and I think what you're saying too, is if they felt that they had perjured themselves, they could repeal that immunity?
No, not.
No, that's where I want the clarification
there's
from.
Okay,
from him.
there is no rescinding of that immunity. That's my understanding, and we conferred with multiple attorneys about that. But the second point I want to make is that it's been said that that investigation was thorough and no stone left unturned. Well, I disagree with that, and for multiple reasons. But the main point was that we tried to explain to the Oneida County sheriffs the connection between Bill Yoder and colchicine, that he had probable knowledge and use of colchicine to grow a crop of super marijuana in the 1980s.
And I think that was testified about during the trial, right?
Yes, and he claimed that there were 3 plants or something. But when we found out that my sister had died of colchicine toxicity, we started looking it up. Okay, we'd never heard of colchicine. And we started researching it. It's interesting, the sisters researched and researched and researched while Bill testified on the stand that he'd never heard of it and he might have looked it up once. Your wife dies of a toxin, you look it up once. Well, anyways, we were scouring the internet and we found this connection to a way of growing super marijuana with colchicine. And it was the same process that Mary had explained to us that Bill had used when he grew the marijuana. Process of treating the seeds to ultimately end up with all female plants.
All right, this is really, really important. He knew how to use colchicine. Dumb Kaitlyn doesn't even know what it is.
Boy, I don't think. I mean, she was 21 years old. What does she know about growing plants?
Yeah, but he wanted a super crop, and so he would order this colchicine.
Yes.
And also they explained the poisoning, it's not going to hit your system that fast. So while Kaitlyn is in the office between, was it 1:15 and 1:30, she was at St. Luke's at like 3:00 that afternoon. Am I wrong?
Actually, she didn't go to the hospital until the next morning, but she left work early because she was just too sick to continue. And she thought she had a stomach bug, and she slept on the couch in the living room because the bathroom was right there. But by early morning, things had changed, and I think she got to the hospital at like 9:00 or 10:00 in the morning the next day.
The next day. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for clarifying that, because there's a lot to go through in this case.
Because of that situation, they have another theory. She seemed to have stabilized and was just needed rehydration, so they were going to keep her overnight. Now, she got the poison first thing in the morning, and the next day she was simply dehydrated. Means that she was probably going to end up recovering. So how did she get so sick after she got to the hospital?
Good point. Very
Yes.
good point.
So when we were researching colchicine, we found that same process.
Yeah.
And we tried to explain that to the investigators, but they basically said that happened so long ago, it's irrelevant. They dismissed it. Well, as the investigation continued, originally they thought Bill Yoder was the guilty party. That's how they were presenting it to us. But as soon as they talked to Bill, that was, as soon as they talked to Bill, all of a sudden now they have a new suspect that they're very certain of. They said Bill was very cooperative, and they have a new suspect that they're very sure of. Okay, well, they knew as time was going along that we sisters were not believing that Kaitlyn was guilty. So as it was getting toward, they kept telling us that they were certain that they were going to get a confession.
Yeah.
Anyways, they brought us in and told us that, we're going to give you a briefing of all the evidence we have against Kaitlyn, and you will be convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that she did this after this briefing. Well, during the briefing, they showed us what was like the paperwork that was about the paper trail, which, by the way, her name wasn't on any of it, but there was a letter of intent that the drug company required to say what your purpose is for ordering the colchicine.
Yeah.
Okay, now remember, we had no idea that there was a letter of intent until they're trying to show us proof that Kaitlyn did this. Well, on that letter of intent was the exact same process, that Bill had used, that we understood Bill to have used with the marijuana crop.
Got
it. So, but they were never willing.
Okay, let's talk about this. If you order this concentration of colchicine, you have to have a letter of intent for how it's going to be used.
Yes.
Kaitlyn is not the brightest light in the tanning bed, my friends. This letter of intent had to have been from Bill. Help me with this, Dr. Booten.
Well, Mary would also have known about it. As a matter of fact, her name and Adam's name are signatories on this letter of intent. And Mary might have just been asked by Bill to order this stuff, because I'm sure even a little bit lasts for years for his purposes, and he may have run out or something. And Mary just filled it in. And maybe you have to have two signatures. I don't know. Adam is not stupid. He was taking care of his plants for his father when his father and mother were away. So he knew about colchicine, or at least knew enough that this is what you put on the seeds at the time, at that particular time of their lives, the seeds' lives. They probably all knew. That's my thought. Now, there would be no reason for Kaitlyn to happen to know that piece of information. So if she was in the dark, I wouldn't be surprised.
Me either.
To consider that Kaitlyn, or that Mary had died of any other way than that Kaitlyn had ordered the poison to kill her. They never entertained the idea that maybe the poison was ordered for some other purpose.
Agricultural.
Yes, the purpose that was stated.
Yeah. Do you how do you so Kaitlyn then, and by the way, we're speaking with Janine Baker King, and she is the sister of Mary Yoder, who passed away, was murdered, as far as we believe. And Kaitlyn Conley has been convicted of manslaughter. Do you believe that Kaitlyn just made many mistakes searching on her computer about how to, this is some of the things that they told us, searching on her phone or computer about how to beat a lie detector test, how to use that colchicine to kill someone. All of these things that were screenshots that came off. And then the letter that she sent, almost as if to frame Adam Yoder. That's how they presented
That
it.
letter is what she believed. And
Okay.
as far as all the computer stuff, I'm not really savvy enough. My son can address that.
We
at
did
another
talk about
point.
that with him last
Yeah.
week. So.
And he is quite computer savvy, and he can explain how all of that information got on the various devices.
And he told us that Adam Yoder had complete access to them.
Yes, and the other incriminating devices were ones from the office that Bill had access to, and Adam had access to also because
Yeah.
he had run the place.
Do you? Where I was leading with that is, do you?
And also, let's not forget, Adam is Janine's nephew. So
Yes.
for her to go to bat for Kaitlyn over her nephew tells you a lot, because she's saying Adam was a problem in the family. Adam owed Kaitlyn a lot of money. Now, what is Adam doing now? Do you happen to know?
The last we have heard is that he was in Colorado working on a marijuana farm. He was probably one of the experts. Yeah. He should be, I can't remember if it was 33 or 34. So now he's a full adult. He's not a kid still wet behind the ears anymore.
Nope. And he has a lot to live with.
Feel that she was set up, or that she just got caught in the middle of all of this?
No, I think that maybe the colchicine was ordered for the reason that was written on the letter, and I don't know what happened down the road, why my sister ended up dead.
Yeah.
But I don't believe Kaitlyn had anything to do with the ordering of the colchicine. Her name wasn't on any of it, and the letter of intent that got sent to the drug company had Adam's name and my sister's name. Now remember, my sister was a master gardener. Okay, Bill knew how to grow super marijuana. All right, so I don't think she had anything to do with it, but I think at the time the colchicine was ordered, nobody maybe knew Mary was going to end up dead.
Yeah.
But once the colchicine was found that she died of colchicine toxicity, I believe Bill and or Adam knew it was going to get traced back to the office, and it was either going to be them or her that goes down for this, because that's the only potential three people.
Yeah. Do you think that I know that the letter that you had written and put on WKTV's message board basically said that if anyone had motive, you feel that there was one person that had motive, and that was her husband.
Right. He had financial and romantic motive. And, you would think that
Bill had financial and romantic motive. I'm not accusing old Bill. I mean, he's actually in a part of the Bahamas where he can't be extradited to the US if anything does come up. What is Kaitlyn's motive? Now, mind you, for a guilty conviction, you don't have to prove motive. They said,
which I find strange right there. But she supposedly had tried, because Adam got sick in April when his parents were away. The story is that she tried to kill him, and when that didn't work, then she turned around and killed Mary as revenge or something. So sad.
Two doctors were well off financially, but for whatever reasons, they weren't. I don't want to air any dirty laundry here, okay? But they didn't have. Bill was over 70 and wanted to retire, and there was no retirement savings, okay? And we found out that he was involved with our sister Kathy. We found that out later, and actually in the first trial, her neighbor testified that she saw them together multiple times before Mary passed. and that within days before Mary's death, that she and her daughter had witnessed them in a passionate kiss and embrace on my sister Kathy's front porch. So he had the financial.
And that is in contrast to what he testified to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He said that the relationship didn't start until after the death.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But they kept backing up the dates, and it just seemed that it didn't make sense that they would get involved so quickly after just why, and you.
So you're coming out and go ahead.
I'm sorry. Have you talked to your sister about that, about the timeline, about the relationship? Have you asked flat out?
Yes, my sister Sharon asked her flat out, and she said that they would have never considered getting involved beforehand. But, I just, it's not plausible. I mean, I don't believe that that's true.
That's going to be difficult for you. Here you're picking sides with a sister. Your family's
I want to make a point though to defend my sister. My sister has a neurological disorder. Okay, and I believe that she's not. And the neurological disorders can change how you process making moral judgments even. And I read up on that because I couldn't understand how my sister could possibly have gotten involved with another sister's husband. And and so it is possible that the way her brain now processes moral judgments based on what I read, you become either more me-centered or and so
and I want to point out, this is your personal opinion based on
what I read,
on your experience with your sister.
Yes. And so I don't think that she's fully accountable for that choice if she made that choice.
And
can I ask you, during the time that Mary was sick, I'm assuming that you had seen her either in the hospital or when she was sick at home. What were your conversations with her like at that time? Did she feel that anything suspicious was going on, or did she not know why she was so sick?
Oh, I didn't have contact with her. She got sick pretty quickly and ended up in the hospital. And then by the time I got there, before the family was notified, she had coded more than once.
Okay.
And you brought up an issue of the cough drop.
Okay. All right. One of the important points that was brought up in the first trial. First of all, I want to say that, I think DA McNamara said these conspiracy theories. Once it's the husband, then it's the son. Yeah. I think that both attorneys got part of the story right. I think they just needed to marry it. But there was it was so complex, so much information to get through that.
I understand that.
But my sister became ill and she ended up going to the hospital, and ultimately she died. But what they found is after she died, there were many specialists there called in. They were completely stumped as to what was wrong.
Didn't know what it was.
Right. But after she died, her tissue samples and blood samples were sent out for the most extensive toxicology testing that's done. And when they found the colchicine, I guess they were able to, they had various samples at different times. They were able to determine that her levels were far higher at her death than they were when she first came in. So that would suggest that she was dosed while she was in the hospital. Yeah. And the only person with her was her husband. And, there was opportunity. I mean, she had a big CT drink or something. And, also he testified that he left and came back, brought her Advair discus, which is for asthma, and cough drops. And the medicine in an Advair discus is a powder like colchicine is. So there was opportunity there.
So one would say, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, talking to medical people, they say, given the fact that she had been having diarrhea and thrown up for 2 days straight, it should have emptied out her system, rather than the levels be higher.
High afterwards. Yeah. Okay, so one would say, boy, these are just theories. You have it's all circumstantial evidence.
It is. Oh, yeah.
But when you really look at Kaitlyn as being the murderer, it's theories and circumstantial evidence. Yes, there is a paper
no
trail,
motive.
but no proof that she's the one that actually.
No, they don't even know
And the
how.
motive is definitely confusing,
out there.
Which they say they don't need, especially for manslaughter.
Right. But there was no motive, and
We're running. I'm running out of time. I have to take a break here.
Okay.
But I'll say this: what do you want people to know? Do you believe that by coming out, you're able to help Kaitlyn?
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be an appeal. And I feel that had we been more vocal up front, that it may not have, gone to the grand jury, because there was a big effort on the Yoder family to have us be quiet before the grand jury hearing. If we're not going to agree with this, at least we'll be quiet for the next 2 weeks, we were told, which we ended up finding out that what was happening in the next 2 weeks was the grand jury hearing, where all of the Yoders ended up getting immunity.
Which you believe could possibly end the opportunity to find or convict the real killer.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Now that is some shady business right there. So the Yoder family was not going to let them know that there was a grand jury. And they weren't even so much concerned about the fact finding of the grand jury. They wanted to make sure Bill and Adam got their immunity. And it's not just any immunity, it's blanket immunity. I've only heard about a blanket immunity in one other case, and that is the Kaitlyn Horman case, where Dee Dee Spiker has blanket immunity and still won't talk.
You have to remember, I think Leanna got blanket immunity also. She was in on all the lies. She gave the aunts a song and dance about how Mary had died, going into severe detail about the medical process and everything. And when one of the sisters just happened to be in the hospital and ran into Mary's doctor a month later, she said, "Oh, I feel so bad that my sister died of da 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 da." And the doctor goes, "Oh, she didn't." And this series of lies seem to have continued.
Series of lies did continue, and they still continue, but it's not going to bother Bill because he's down in the Bahamas with Mary's sister.
Well, I mean, he has blanket immunity anyhow, so can he be charged on perjury?
Well, and that's what I've always been wondering, because he definitely lied on the stand. But for whatever reason, they don't really want to mess with him, and it might be because of where he lives in the Bahamas. They know even if they prosecute it, they can't bring him up.
Right, but they could bring up Adam. But I'm not sure he actually was in on it before the fact.
Mm-hmm.
He was so stunned at the wake that he just couldn't function. I don't think he knew what was going to happen or something, because his responses were something that people would see in somebody who was in total shock, didn't know this was going to hit him between the eyes. Whereas Bill was like pretty much the everyday guy. I mean, I don't know if he cried for 6 hours as he testified and then it was out of him or not, but the way he was during the time he was there, he was like pretty good. People were amazed.
All right. Well, a private investigator who was working for the defense has put more things out that he said that the prosecution would never even entertain. We're going to look at part of this.
Tom Wires, why do you believe Kaitlyn Conley? Well, first of all, I'm saying, and I'm putting words in your mouth. So tell me.
I don't like your website, new website, because now you got these cameras on the angles. And
that's a
my
good
friends
point.
say I have more of a radio face.
Okay, all right. They do have cameras on you right now.
Kind of scary now.
Do you? I said earlier, you believe Kaitlyn Conley. You're an investigator.
You're getting a lot of compliments in here. I'm putting them up. Walking Dead said, I must say, you're very beautiful. September Virgo said, the lady speaking reminds me of a movie star's voice. Lap it up. I don't get that type of affection around here. Lap it up.
Investigator, private investigator. You work on several trials, several cases, and all sorts of things. You're former law enforcement.
Yeah.
You not only do you believe she's not guilty, you believe she's innocent.
That's correct.
Why?
Well, when I first got hired by Chris Pelly, first of all, I want to commend Frank Policelli for getting a not guilty verdict on the murder count.
On the murder, yeah. I guess we're not focusing on that.
Which Chris wanted in the first trial, but he had a hung jury with that.
Yeah.
But when Chris Pelly first called me on the case, and it was probably a week or so after he was arrested, she was arrested. I love working for Chris Pelly because he, I'm trying to think now. I like working for him. There's only a handful full of lawyers I like working for, and he's one of them. And the reason I like working for him is he likes me to go out and find whether it's good or bad for the client.
Find it out.
So yeah,
Get the truth.
So no matter what, what comes back, he'll accept what if it's bad, he'll accept it and make
and work with it. At least he knows. I would rather want to know the truth.
Right.
No matter what situation you're in, don't you want to know the facts? Because then you can deal with the facts. But when it's the unknown that you get screwed up on.
So basically, he gives me the discovery paperwork documents that the police and prosecution has, and it was like 2 boxes. And, they call them lead files, and they're manila folders, and it's very tedious work to review it. And so, for example, they'll have lead file number 2, and it'll be just like one piece of paper, and it'll say, took a picture of a house, on such and such a date. Then the next file will be lead 3, and it'll be like all the phone records of somebody.
Yeah.
So I read everything, every case, a murder case, or any case, I read every document that's in there. So there's quite a few documents, and he also gave me some thumb drive stuff.
It's believed that maybe she planted the colchicine inside Adam Yoder's car. This created a cloud of doubt. The DA will tell us, and has told us, all of, and Manaski and Andrew, you tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but it is unequivocally, everything points to Kaitlyn Conley. That's what the DA says.
Well, of course, they charged her, and they're going to have to say that, right? So, but my feeling was, I told Chris, I'm going to go out, and there was 3 things I was going to look at was, whether there was any substance to show a motive for Kaitlyn, which I could not find.
Couldn't find.
And 2 was to find somebody to corroborate. Technically, you had Adam confessing to Kaitlyn in that letter, right? And so that's somewhat a confession, but it didn't work well for Kaitlyn. And so my goal with that was also to try to corroborate, find somebody that maybe heard the same thing, right?
Right.
And then the third one was I found issues with Bill's statement and testimony in grand jury about when he was starting to see the sister, Kathy Richmond.
And the bell goes off, the motive bell goes off, because there's only really, of all of this, there's one logical motive, and that would be one of the oldest motives in the
Chris
world.
Belly always said to me about the
romance.
First trial is he felt that my finding of that Patricia Keating and that testified that saw them
together
Bill
before
and Kid week or so before them.
Okay. Money and love are pretty good motives for murder. Not saying it's the right thing to do, but if you're looking for a motive, we know one person in this case that had it. Why would they not let the neighbor talk that said, I saw him with her sister?
They just dismissed it because it didn't fit into their predetermined cause, is my guess. They did let her say something at the grand jury, was it? I forget now, but they dismissed it pretty much.
And from the get-go, they believed that Bill was behind his wife's murder.
That was the basis for Pelly's defense. And it ran out of steam really fast when Bill was given complete blanket immunity.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Here's the thing in these cases, and we hear about proffer agreements quite often. We hear about immunity quite often. When somebody takes a proffer or gets immunity, they're being protected from something they know or have done. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, let's reiterate that. You found the witness who said,
Well, I
saw
found the
them-
money. You ever heard the expression?
Mhm,
Show
yeah.
me the money.
Right.
Right. So
You
no, but-
followed the money trail.
No. So what happened was, this is based on, I find this information based on what the police subpoena, right? So when they interviewed Bill, he tells them that he starts seeing and being with Kathy in October of 2015.
After the murder.
Right. So through financial records, I find that he's down in Casanova, where Kathy lives, like starting in August. And he's down there and he's buying things like in 3 days in a row. He's here, he's at the, Tops, he's at Rite Aid. So then there's 3-day break. Then he's back down there buying, he's at the diner here and he's at the restaurant. And so you could tell a pattern. What's amazing is how you can look at financial records like a debit card and see where you are, where you're going.
Yeah.
And today's technology is just incredible.
So Bill Yoder was given immunity.
Yeah.
And do you believe he then...
But what I'm going to tell you is I went down to Casanova. My goal was to go all these businesses and see if there was video. And, my problem is you're working on a case that's a year and a half later. So, people don't retain video for that time. And then I canvassed the neighborhood. And then, I did have 4 witnesses that saw Bill with Kathy prior to Mary's death.
You had
But
4 witnesses.
Yes.
That saw the 2 of them. This is the sister of the deceased.
One
and the
I
husband.
got a notarized statement from.
The others didn't want to cooperate?
Well, what happened was once they were subpoenaed, and they did come to, to the trial, and they, one couldn't remember, and one recanted their story, and one also couldn't remember. So
you feel somebody got to them?
Well, there's theories out there that I have, but
Okay, this has always been a problem for me. You have people that are willing to talk, they know what's going on, but then they recant what they said they saw. So I like what the host said. Did someone get to them?
That wouldn't be out of the line of possibility if Bill heard about them ahead of time. I don't know how quiet people are about giving evidence in a trial. But somebody, that's awful coincidental that 3 people changed their minds about testifying after they said they would, and that they did have information. I think somebody had talked to them.
I do too.
Even though you got a tape.
Yeah. Do you feel? Because Bill Yoder has been given immunity. So your belief is, based on testimony, people that you interviewed, your belief is the relation that he lied on the stand when he said the relationship started after the death of Mary Yoder.
That came out in testimony.
Right.
So
would that be enough because the immunity stands unless there's perjury?
Well, the testimony of Patricia Keening is direct evidence to a motive. It's not really direct evidence to the crime itself. Right. So it would be up to the jury to say, wow, maybe.
But ask you.
Can I ask you some of the evidence, the digital evidence about how it was ordered, when it was ordered, who had access to the computers, the searching on the cell phone? I know that's not 100%, but
My
boy,
answer
it
to
seemed
you-
to indicate.
Well, my answer to that would be, I'm not savvy in computers, and I don't brag to be. So what I told Chris Pelly was, there's this computer expert that I had worked with before, and I told him his name is Jerry Grant, and I said you need to have him look at all that stuff. And I didn't even bother with reviewing that stuff, and but I was communication with Chris Pelly between that, with the guy and Chris, and Chris tell me what he was searching or was looking for and stuff. But my feeling with that is technology is the penal law and the CPL, the criminal procedure law, is not catching up with today's technology.
Sure.
Now, I'll give you a good example. Is I had a case in Syracuse where there's two people working in an office, and the coworker goes to the person, "Can I? I'll download this app for you because I heard you're interested in this subject on this app." So she takes the phone and downloads the app, but then she opens up his photos and she finds activity of crimes. So of course it's wrong that he had that on the phone, but was it wrong for her? Is there a crime that, when I give you my phone, let's say you want to search and say, "Hey, let me Google," or "I want to go on YouTube," or "Let me Google something
all
on
of a
your
sudden
phone."
you're going through photos.
Do you expect that person to go further? And so, but now is it, once you give the phone, is it a free fall for somebody to do that or not?
So, but can I just follow up one point on that? The idea that she was somehow framed, I've always found interesting because it did not seem that anybody was pointing the finger at her.
I want to get to that because that's worth getting to. We're talking to Tom Wires. Tom is with TW Private Investigations out of Mohawk, former law enforcement, and work on a lot of these trials, and was certainly very much involved in especially the first trial of Kaitlyn Conley. So back to Manansky's question. It is kind of a leap to be able to say that somebody was trying to set her up, because if they were, did they do it didn't seem like anybody was trying to set her up.
Well, my
or were they, and it's just that brilliant?
I'll be honest with you, when I did the investigation, I wasn't looking into somebody framing somebody. I felt my focus of this my investigation led to the bill with the finance, looking at the financial reports.
So we've heard there were financial issues with the Yoders. There was a book deal that went bad, according to the family.
Okay, and this is something they really wouldn't touch on in the trial at all, because everything had to be pointed at Kaitlyn. We get that.
Right.
And let me tell you something. She could be as guilty as sin. I don't know. Something for me with this has never added up. So they are successful people, but they have financial problems. That always leads me to scratch my head. You have successful, intelligent people, but they have financial problems. Bill is sweating bullets because he wants to retire, and they've got nothing in savings to retire. He starts an affair with the sister-in-law, who had just recently lost her husband from kidney failure. Some people say it was poisoning. I don't know. We have another family member that died of poisoning.
Yeah. But I think he made unwise investments also. I was reading something about him and his books. Well, I write. I do some marketing. I know how much I can afford for advertising. He lost his shirt on all this advertising. What was he thinking? Who was he printing? I don't even know who his publisher was, but I think it was a vanity press or something that they were charging him a ton of money. And he never saw this. This was not his first book. something strange about his priorities about his books.
Well,
And that's going to play in.
he wanted to be rich and famous and notorious. And well, he's famous. He's got a lot of money now, but I wouldn't say that people look at him as notorious.
Well, they should.
There was the potential of the relationship that actually existed. So do you believe there's far more pointing towards Bill Yoder than
I say
Kaitlyn
there's
Conley?
more of a motive.
Right.
You could, and
Certainly
you saw
the classic
that,
motive.
and
that
you
would
saw
be-
that in the first trial.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and that led me to the direction to go to Casanova and, you know, look that direction. And so
I want to ask, trial one, of course, ended in a mistrial. And Chris Pelley was the attorney. Frank Policelli was the second attorney. How do you assess Frank's? Do you want to get down that road?
Well, they're both good attorneys. They both have different personalities. Sometimes I
play
think.
a role?
What's that?
Did that play a role?
It could.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, as you know, just to watch or, you know, at both trials. I didn't sit in the courtroom.
Right.
But, you know, I always, sometimes when I work on these cases, you know, I find things for an attorney that's exculpatory. I think it's exculpatory evidence that will, at times I always think, wow, this might even.
This is the smoking gun.
Well, create an acquittal or something. And then there's a conviction. And to me, sometimes it's based on who's the better salesman at the trial, like the prosecutor or the defense attorney. You know,
well, in this case, do you feel then that the prosecution must have been the better salesperson?
Well, like I said, I wasn't there to see it.
Right.
But
let me ask you this: juries, boy, the unknown.
I'm so glad that he phrased it that way. And remember, he's not like a Jim Terry private investigator, okay? He's former law enforcement, he's retired, and he is a private investigator now. What he said is so true. A lot of times in trials, it's who's the better salesman.
Yes.
So when the evidence is iffy, who's going to sell you the beat up car faster?
Yeah, a good way of putting it. Yeah, they had done their work, and I don't know. Frank Policelli also decided to change the argument. Pelley was Bill. Policelli was Adam, and because they had different motives, and people knew it, they could argue less convincingly, because McNamara and Pissy, I forget her name, Lissy, they had the same story both times.
Now, hopefully you can clear this up for us, because I've never understood this connection either. Annette wants to know, and she's an upstate New Yorker. She said, what is the Casanova connection? She said, what am I missing?
Okay, Catherine Richmond, Mary's oldest sister, lived in Casanova. Everybody else lived closer to Utica. Casanova is just under an hour's drive from where Bill and Mary lived. Not out of the realm of possibility to be able to go visit Catherine whenever he wanted to.
Okay, so that was the investigating he was doing. Okay,
Yes,
that's because of that connection. All right, hopefully, thank you for that. Whew.
Right? A jury
Sure.
is, you think you have presented the perfect case, but based on everything that you know.
And I would have to say, not only jurors, based on my experience, but appellate court. judges. I always felt that they're unpredictable.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And what their decisions are. And a good example, if you read in the National Registry of Exonerations on the Skippy Wilson case, the one I worked on, and you read what that lawyer presented in the appellate court, I couldn't believe that they denied the appeal.
The chances of getting a positive outcome in the appellate court, just the bare odds, based on statistics, not really good. The percentages aren't good.
But I've had clients or whoever ask me, what do you think the jury's going to do? And I tell them I don't know.
Do you feel, though, based on your knowledge, that there was enough, and this is knowledge of investigation, there was enough doubt that you could not convict? Do you believe that?
I would say it was obvious.
Reasonable doubt.
I would say it was obvious with the first trial, and then also with the second. But what changed was the offering of the manslaughter.
Right.
And because let's face it, they did a not guilty on the murder.
They did a not guilty on the murder, and then they said, okay, well, you can consider manslaughter. I have never seen anything like it. Probably never will again. You're charged with murder. You're on trial for murder. You can't turn it around and call it a damn hit and run.
Right. It's amazing to me that they were not given instructions at the beginning of the trial that it's either murder or manslaughter, instead of waiting until they can't figure out how to debate this anymore and then give them the choice. That it's hardly a normal situation to me. The poor girl. She was going to get it one way or the other.
Because they were going to acquit her. And then they said, you can consider manslaughter.
They couldn't. They didn't have enough to acquit her. They didn't have enough to charge her with murder or to find her guilty of murder. And so they come up at the last moment with this manslaughter idea. And it's like, well, she'll be out in a few years. Maybe that'll solve our problem. We get to go home for dinner.
And that's what it seems to me.
Yeah. Here's John. I want to quickly get this in. We have 3 minutes. John in Sauquoit with a question for you, Tom.
Just have a quick question, guys. I think that Frank Policelli made a huge mistake by not putting Kaitlyn on the stand again. If she's innocent, and that he believes she's innocent, and she believes she's innocent, then his response is, it doesn't hurt. I mean, what is it going to gain?
We asked we asked
the
him
ability to do that. Yeah, I think he made a huge error in judgment.
All right, John, thanks. I will tell you, we did ask Frank that question, and his answer was you would never put her on the trial. There was no good that could come out of that, only bad. You're not an attorney, but do you want to comment on that?
Well, that's never up to me ever on any cases I work on. And I would never tell a lawyer like Chris Pilley, Frank, say, hey, you need to put her on the him or her on the stand. And
that's your job is to get information.
Yeah, my job is always, and like I said, there's times where I go home and when I work on a case and I say, I don't think this person did it. Then there's times where I say, I think maybe.
Yeah. You believe not only not guilty, but the wrong person person is in jail.
Let's face it, it's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've overturned 3 convictions based on finding new evidence. Released 3 people out of state prison.
Yeah.
One was in for 9 years, one was in for 4, and the other one was 3 years. So, that evidence was out there.
And this is such a circumstantial case.
Yeah.
Why is the prosecution so sure, the DA so sure that she's guilty? Because he has said to us vehemently, there's no doubt that she is guilty.
Well, that you would have to ask them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can speculate what they're thinking on that part.
All right.
Yeah, that's a great interview. And he worked directly for the defense. He brought a lot to the table. But like he said, he's like, sometimes I go home and I'm like, this person didn't do it. He's like, sometimes I go home and I'm like, well, pretty much seems like this is a waste of my time, but I'll collect my bill, if you know what I mean. Wiss wanted to know, did Kaitlyn have any kind of record for any kind of criminal activity? She had a traffic ticket.
It's not criminal, though. Most of us have had traffic tickets. We don't all belong in jail.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know that one thing that really irritated people was the demeanor at the sentencing. Now, of course, some people picked Kaitlyn apart, but I think she was a little bamboozled, that she couldn't believe this was happening. But if you listen to the impact statements, there's some things that are dropped that really upset a lot of people.
Now, even 2.5 years after Mary's death, my life still feels empty and hollow. None of the events or moments of my life really seem to matter or to mean anything. I feel like I'm not living, I'm just marking time day by day.
Oh, boo-hoo, Bill. I feel like I'm not even living. I'm just, oh, come on.
I think of Mary every day. I often wake up in the middle of the night crying. I loved her so much, and I still love her so much. I see pain in my children's eyes every time I'm with them, at a time when they're in the midst of their life. Should be excitedly moving forward in hope and anticipation, should be happily raising their families. Her own family life is still stressed almost to the breaking point. Mary was the center of our family, the glue that held us all together, the person that everyone was the closest to, the person everyone turned to in times of need. The sense of pain and loss we feel.
But he didn't cry when she died.
Well, he said he did. He cried for 6 hours straight. And then I guess the tears were gone by the time of the wake, though.
There you go. Yeah.
We'll be part of every moment the rest of our lives. Part of all of us died that day in the hospital with Mary. But Mary's death isn't just a loss for those of us who knew and loved her. It's also a loss for all of those she would have touched if her life hadn't been cut short. Mary was a giving, loving, compassionate person, and she brought light into every life and every situation she touched. The total cost of this one senseless act of murder is almost unimaginable. Yes, Mary was the victim in all this, but I believe that all of us, to one degree or another, are also victims of this murder.
Bill's in the Bahamas with her sister, drinking a Mai Tai. His biggest responsibility of the day is figuring out what hat he's going to put on, what sandals, and the sister's putting Noxzema on his nose. That's it. In the Bahamas. Yeah. He's in the Bahamas.
The day Mary died, the world lost someone truly, truly good and wonderful. Now the whole world is a little darker without Mary here.
My name is Adam Yoder. I am the son of Mary Yoder. My mother is the best person that I've ever known, the best person I will ever know. I wish I could continue my mother's legacy of love and kindness and forgiveness and patience for my family. The shoes to fill are so big that I do not know where to start. Hopefully in time, I will find some answers and be able to partially remedy the blessing of the angel that was stolen from the people I love most. Those people are my father, my 2 sisters, my 5 nephews, my 2 nieces. As much as I dream of helping them in any form of lasting happiness now, I know that No matter what, I can never fill the void when we're all desperately fighting to cope. I want the lies about my mother and I having a negative relationship to stop. But more importantly, I want the lies about my parents' relationship to stop. Hands down, my parents had the best marriage I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. My parents always loved each other unconditionally, as they did with me. And that does not mean that we never had problems. But we continued to love each other throughout everything, and we always forgave each other. Let's focus on forgiveness. During this trial, the court and the public have learned that I have both done and said horrible things in the past, and I don't expect anybody to forgive me for that.
Yeah, he's always been real sketchy to me, but I can't get away from Bill. And you know him personally, so I understand there's some things that you probably don't want to say or can't say.
Well, he was always a somewhat difficult child, let's put it that way.
Annette said, "Why do I feel sick to my stomach?"
As you should. They were all lying through their teeth.
We're all lying through their teeth.
I can't say, vouch for Adam, but I had a problem with Bill always seeming like he was so fake. So I don't believe much of what he says. I mean, you could tell me it's snowing outside. I look out the window and it's white all over the place. I'm still not sure I would believe him.
There you go.
I don't want your forgiveness. I don't deserve your forgiveness. In fact, I want to bring the focus to my most unforgivable mistakes. I introduced Kaitlyn Conley to my family. And because I loved her, and they all accepted her and treated her as family, as blood, I convinced my parents through multiple discussions and arguments to hire her at Chiropractic Family Care. I am the reason she met my family, and I am the reason she continued to be a member of my family, even after our romantic relationship had ended. Since this investigation began, I have seen 3 psychologists and 1 psychiatrist. I have now been prescribed multiple medications for sleep.
See, this is a victim's impact statement. But Adam's up there talking not about the impact it's had on their family, but about how he can't sleep and shit.
Well, that's part of the impact. I think he's guilty on some level, so he may not be able to forgive himself. So that you know, the guilt continues and continues.
Just Me said he got $10,000 he doesn't have to pay back. Well, that $10,000 is gone.
I heard it was $20,000.
Oh. Well, I guarantee that money is gone.
Yeah.
For major depression, for severe anxiety, and for PTSD, all of which have been prescribed for one simple reason: self-hatred. Make no mistake, I hate the defendant with every bone in my body and every drop of blood in my veins. I hate Kaitlyn Ann Conley because Kaitlyn Ann Conley murdered my mother. As far as any of us can guess, she did so to cause me maximum pain and to devastate me completely and permanently. And she did exactly that. In truth, part of the reason I didn't want to make a statement today is because I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. But make no mistake, as much as I hate her, which is more than I ever thought I would be capable of hating anyone, I hate myself infinitely more. I introduced her to my family. I got her a job with my parents. And if I hadn't done those things, my mother would still be alive. And I live with that pain and the torture of that truth. There hasn't been a single day since the first trial where I haven't suffered from that. And I promise every person in this courtroom that I will carry that with me for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Quite a production. Just Me said Kaitlyn moved on. She didn't want him anymore.
This young man is tortured because he knows the truth but didn't do anything about it. His father is a very, very controlling man and probably told him what for, and you do it my way, period, end of discussion. I don't know if Adam actually acted on any of the stuff to make his mother die, but he just can't get over. He knew something. You don't fault oneself for introducing somebody. You fault oneself for not protecting somebody or something like that. That's my opinion.
Your opinion is spot on, because his father had no problem moving on with his life in the Bahamas.
That's right.
The rest of the family is in crumbles. The only one that seems to be just fine and not even thinking about it is old Bill and the sister in the Bahamas.
Yeah. I don't know about the other two sisters, Adam's sisters. I don't know how they're doing. I think one of them may have had something to do with the whole situation, but don't know about the second one. I guess maybe I'm suspicious by nature, but a lot of questions remain in my mind about the children.
Oh, absolutely. Because something, what was done, this murder was done out of pure selfishness by someone. And it is just my opinion that the someone that's in jail is no perfect angel by any means. Not that any of us are. But it seems to me she didn't have the means or the opportunity. And that's what you have to prove in court. That's the reason there was a mistrial. That's the reason the jury was hung. It wasn't proven. So they said, okay, you can do manslaughter.
Right, right. I mean, I have a million questions that I'll never get answers to about this that would have helped me to determine if somebody was telling the truth or not.
Mm-hmm. And it's a gorgeous area. To give you guys an idea of upstate New York, when people think of New York, they think of New York City.
Mm-mm.
That's all they know. They say, oh, I mean, I couldn't stand, all that city living. The upstate New York is not like that. Gorgeous area, gorgeous people, great food, but even in very nice areas, bad things happen. And there's bad people. Nana Banana said it is, except for the winter.
Well, yes.
Woo!
It's long.
Woo! All right, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Our very special guest, Dr. Booten, has to be somewhere. I didn't mean to keep her this long, but we just get into our discussions. I mean, sometimes we can be on the phone for 5 hours. But I do want you guys to check out, she is the producer of 27 Matches. Okay. I still want you guys to check out this movie, 27 Matches. Here is another clip of the trailer.
My dear, I must apologize for this abrupt change to your daily routine. Where once your life was meaningless, the world, it seems, has bigger things in mind. In society, they call us slavers, pimps, traffickers. They apply titles which imply some sort of moral distinction, a breach of the most basic of ethics. But ethics is a school of thought limited only to mankind. The universe ascribes no such labels.
"27 Matches" is an ensemble noir film about a day in the life of the sex trafficking industry. It's a morality piece about a bunch of sex traffickers, but it's different in that we don't take judgment on them. I mean, we all have a judgment of it, but the camera doesn't. And we're showing this from the camera's point of view.
There's some fiction sort of interwoven into our story, but it's a very real thing.
It needs to be exposed because it thrives on not being exposed. It thrives on our complicitness with it. It thrives on the idea of, I don't want to see this, so I'm not going to see it.
I worked with an organization that helped out trafficked victims, and I was asked to come on board to consult from behind the scenes to see how accurately the film was being portrayed from a psychological perspective, from the sex trafficking perspective, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Most sex trafficking movies are it's very obvious who you're rooting for. Every character we have in this movie is neither all evil nor all good. The victim isn't some sweet, innocent girl that got taken and her dad has to come rescue her.
They're not these great archetypal villains who are wearing the black hats, which make them so easily identifiable.
These guys are in business. That's their business. Like, some people go and work in the bank. Some people, work on a farm. Some people pick up trash. These guys are sex traffickers.
It's an uncomfortable feeling. You don't want to know that you might like or see part of you in some of these characters. And that's what makes this movie very unique, I think. It may come off strange that we're not taking such a judgment, not because we condone it in any way, but because we wanted to show it in its most realistic way, because this is why it's able to continue, because these people blend. They're real people, and they have qualities that are going to be similar to, everyday people. The most amazing thing with this movie, and one of the reasons that we've got almost all of it done, is because we were lucky enough to film this in Utica, New York.
There's a lot of talent in the local art scene, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see just what kind of people came on board to help out with this project, because it was a pro bono project. And I got to learn some phenomenal facets of what it really takes to work behind the scenes, from camera work to makeup to scheduling and prepping to post-production planning. And these guys are phenomenal for what they're doing so far.
It's humbling, the amount of work that people have done for us, and the amount of hours people have put in, and the ownership that they feel in this movie. We've had people who were too ignorant to know what they could not do, and people who are also very good at what they do, to come together and form a team that actually worked with a decent amount of cohesion.
A lot of people were understanding what we were trying to do, and that it seemed too serious for them. So a lot of us on set have had to pick up extra jobs and do a lot more. It's a constant roller coaster of just getting it done so we can just show the world what we need to show them.
And that's really exhausted a lot of our funds. We wanted to make sure this gets made no matter what. But now what we need to do is we need your help to get it out there.
What we still have left to do is all the post-production stuff, which is getting all the audio taken care of, the visual effects, the legal paperwork, the festival submission fees. If you can help donate to this project, that would be great. But if you can't, share it, like the page, put it on your Twitter, put it on your Facebook. Help us spread awareness about this cause and about our film. Thank you.
Absolutely. I put the link in here. Share it, share it, share it, because it's such an important message. It's a passion project. You're a true Renaissance woman, my friend.
Thank you very much.
I mean, you're also working on opening orphanages in Uganda.
Yes, yes, we have a 501c3, and we are adding to it every day, and we've already bought the land, and we have the architectural designs done.
Yeah, after one conversation with you, I have to take a nap. I can't keep up with you. You've always got something going on.
Yeah, you and I have discussed probably half of my stuff.
I know. I know. Guys, let's have a huge round of applause for our very special guest, Dr. Booten. I promise if we sweet talk her, she will be back because we always have a lot to talk about. Absolutely phenomenal work you do. You're a phenomenal friend. I will be seeing you in a few months. We have some visiting to do.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. And I want to say thank you so much to the best chat and best community on the YouTube streets. Thank you to our fabulous moderators for always keeping it real, keeping it cool, and letting everyone have their opinion and speak their mind. Isn't that how it's done?
Yes, indeed.
That is how it is done. If I don't see you in Discord today or one of the Facebook groups, we will be doing a members live this weekend. DT Driver has got some dad jokes that he can't wait to share with you. We have some things to talk about that have been going on behind the scenes that you don't want to miss. And I just hope everyone has a fabulous Friday. Fabulous Friday, and thank you for being fabulous friends. I will see you guys on the other side.